I stepped onto the porch just as the first pale streaks of dawn edged over the horizon, yawning in my flannel shirt and scuffed boots, craving coffee more than anything. But before I could even think the word, I froze. 10 feet away, standing on the wooden boards, was a full-grown bear, no roaring, no charge, just trembling, her breath ragged, and her matted fur dripping with dew and something darker. Then I saw it, cradled in her jaws, limp legs dangling, head tilted. My heart slammed against my ribs. My ribs. Her eyes. I'd never witnessed an animal cry before. Warm tears welled and trickled down her muzzle like a faucet that wouldn't stop. Fear screamed at me to close the door, to arm myself, to pretend I hadn't seen any of this. But something in her silent plea stopped me cold. This wasn't a threat. It was a mother's desperate call for help, and I was the only one around to answer it. What would I do next? She placed the cub so gently on the porch that my whole body ached at the tenderness. I shuffled backward, instincts roaring in my ears. Every warning, every cautionary tale I'd ever heard about wild bears flashed through my mind. Yet when I knelt, dropped to the wooden floor, I realized this wasn't about danger. It was about life. The cub looked smaller than a cocker spaniel, ribs etched against skin, one ear crusted with dried blood. I felt a twitch as I laid 2 fingers against his chest, one feeble rise and fall, and a surge of hope lit inside me. I blurted out, "I'll try," though I felt anything but certain. The mother bear watched unblinking, as if she trusted me with her world. Could I live up to such faith? I darted back inside, heedless of every instinct screaming at me to flee, grabbing towels, a heating pad, bottled water, anything to cradle this tiny life. The mother settled on the porch, statue still but for her eyes, which never strayed from the window behind which I worked. There on the couch, the cub was a sodden bundle of towels, cold and limp, but not gone. I pressed 2 fingers to his ribs again, held my breath, leaned so close, I could smell his wet, earthy fur tinged with metal, the scent of blood. Then, just barely, I felt it. A breath, faint but real. "Alive," I whispered, wrapping him tighter in my flannel. In that moment I knew he, and she, had chosen me, and I wasn't about to give up. By mid-morning, the living room was a makeshift clinic. Towels draped every surface, the heater hummed at full blast, and the cub lay swaddled like a fragile bird, one paw protruding as though probing for safety. I coaxed a few drops of honey water into his mouth with a turkey basta, the closest thing I had to a dropper. His tongue flicked, a tiny victory. Outside the mother paced, 2 steps left, 2 steps right, never closer, but never retreating either. Prowne. I dabbed peroxide on his bleeding leg, praying infection wouldn't finish what the cold and fury of another bear had begun. Each flinch, each breath, told me he was still fighting. Were we enough to save him? My phone buzzed. Mark, the vet friend who treated cows and horses, was half asleep. "A bear cub," I blurted. Silence, then numbers and instructions, warmth, fluids, no solids, keep him calm. Jenny from Wildlife Rehab was driving up with meds. I could imagine her face when she saw my living room circus, blankets piled high, a heater roaring, and me sitting cross-legged beside a nearly dead bear cub. Still, the mother did not move. She trusted me to do what she could not. Could I betray that trust? Night crept in around us. The cub's breathing was shallow, and his eyelids fluttered until one eye opened, revealing a wash of confusion and something else. "Trust," I whispered. "You're not alone," and rested my hand against his damp head. Outside, the silhouette of the mother bore down on the porch boards, as motionless as stone. I spent the night on the floor, sharing quiet moments with a creature neither wild nor tame, bound by a fragile hope that he might live. Morning would tell if hope was enough. Dawn found me with a stiff neck and pounding headache, but the cub still breathed. Packing him into a plastic bin lined with towels, I eased him into the passenger seat. The mother rose at the friction of my boots, on gravel, nostrils flaring, muscles coiled. Bleh. When I stepped out, I promised her, "Oh, he's okay. I'll bring him back." She watched, silent and immense, as I drove away. 40 minutes later, Jenny and her vet techs swarmed over the cub, like angels. They whispered diagnoses: boar's bite, deep wound, brutal intent, each word a nail pounding home the odds. "A slim," Jenny said. "But he's a fighter. Were we fighters enough?" Evening found me retracing my steps, the cub sedated, but alive in his bin. The porch light sliced through the gathering dark as I slid the bin onto the boards. She was there, massive and patient. I set the cub down and backed away, heart hammering. The world held its breath. Then she lowered herself beside her child, folding her great bulk to the ground as though declaring, "I'm not going anywhere." I exhaled, tears stinging, as two predators, one wild, one hesitant, kept a silent vigil under a watchful moon. What would tomorrow bring? Days passed. The cub, messy with goat milk, mush and berries, wobbled on unsteady legs, a drunken warrior testing his strength. The mother stayed close, sometimes curled by the steps, sometimes pacing among the pines, always watching. Larry, my neighbour, pulled up one afternoon, furious that I'd let a bear camp on my porch. His panic over threats and a what-ifs collided with my certainty that she was only there for one reason. Baby. When the sheriff's deputy arrived, she warned that a wildlife unit would soon tranquilize and relocate her unless I ended it. My stomach roiled. Either choice felt like betrayal. Could there be another way? The next dawn I packed the cub again, determined to return him to where he belonged. He belonged. I drove down a hidden forest trail until the woods closed in so tight the hush was deafening. I set the bin on the mossy floor, and for a heartbeat neither of us moved. Then, from the shadows, 30 feet away, she emerged, head low, muscles coiled, breath misting. "He's yours," I whispered. The cub clambered out and sniffed the earth, then lifted his gaze to her. In that gaze past relief, recognition, and a hesitant peace. She nudged him forward, soft as a sigh. As he walked back to me, I realized she had made the choice I never could. Some bonds transcend the wild. 2 months later, the cub lives in the space between worlds. He escapes the half-fenced pen in a week, chasing squirrels with reckless joy and napping under my porch when dusk falls. I leave the porch light on, stack berries where the forest meets the lawn, and sit by the window with bad coffee, listening for the shuffle of paws in the dark. Sometimes at 3 a.m, I find a clean-killed rabbit by the tree line, no blood trail, as though she is leaving gifts, and the cub paces and whimpers until I join him, sharing the vigil. In those moments, I feel her presence more than ever. Because this story isn't over. Not by a long shot. Each dawn now carries a tremor of anticipation, as if the forest itself holds its breath alongside us. Some mornings I find paw prints circling the porch. Hers, larger, deliberate, and his, skittish impressions that curve toward mine. I trace them with my boot, feeling both privilege and awe at this silent dialogue. When twilight drapes the trees in violets and gold, the cub emerges from shadow, his wet nose pressing into my hand in a soft reminder of trust. I sense her just beyond the pines, an unseen sentinel, her presence woven into every rustle of leaves. Last week, a sudden storm rolled in, wind hammering the eaves and rain slicing the night. I watched through the rain-streaked window as she stood guard on the porch, back to me, ears flattened against the gale, shielding him with her body. At that moment, the boundaries between human and wild dissolved. I realized our lives had become threads in the same tapestry of survival and compassion. Now, each time the cub tilts his head at a stranger's footsteps, he teaches me that acceptance can bridge worlds. And as thunder rumbles in the distance, I tighten the blankets around him and whisper, "Oh, we'll face it together." Somewhere in that storm, I know she's listening, waiting for the next page of our story to turn.